Tervetuloa Uunojen maailmaan. Moi.
Anna mulle anteeksi. Mä en tiennyt, että sä tosissaan olet saanut pääosan.
Haluaisi olla tähti tietysti. Miksipä en? Mä oon aina haaveillut. Mutta en mä nyt uskon, että näin nuorena vielä pääsin televisioon kantaa. Mä ajattelin, että joskus 18-vuotiaana voisin mennä vaikka laulajaksi.
Maanantai-illan kirkkaimmat tähdet ovat
Kaija Salminen Jeppualta, Uuno Turhaporona.
Melina Yliuntinen Oulusta, Kaija Koona.
Ei petosta ilman luottamusta, naisen kosto miehelle, pankille, ilman kavaluutta.
Tää on kyllä hirveä summa.
Mä oon nähnyt meidän tiedostosta, miten kusessa sä oot.
Mun lainaehtoja yritettiin muuttaa, mutta mä en suostunut.
Oikein. Sä lähtee mun kanssa vielä ulos.
3. osa maanantaina 22. tammikuuta kello 21.20.
The Spanish Popular Party gathers in Madrid this weekend for a pre-election rally amid confidence that they can finally oust the country's socialists after 13 years of rule. The party Secretary-General, Francisco Alvarez Cascos, told the delegates that they would begin a new era of honest government while sticking with a pro-European strategy. The Popular Party is clear favourite to win March's general election, although it is hampered by the less than charismatic leadership of José María Aznar and a reluctance of many Spaniards to vote for the right because of General Franco's dictatorship. To assuage those fears, the Popular Party has adopted the slogan, "Let the centre win."
Turkey's caretaker Prime Minister Tansu Çiller with her True Path party has been given the chance to form a new government. On Friday, she announced that President Demirel had charged her with the task of restoring political stability to the country. It was the Islamic Welfare Party under the leadership of Nekmet Erbakan which polled the most amount of votes in last month's general election. But Erbakan had problems finding a coalition partner due to his party's Islamist policies. Mesut Yilmaz and his conservative Motherland Party refused to join Erbakan. It's now more than likely that Yilmaz will join Çiller.
The Black Sea ferry hostage crisis is over, with the pro-Chechen gunmen surrendering to Turkish security forces. The 4-day hostage ordeal for around 200 passengers and crew ended peacefully after several hours of tense negotiations between the 7 or 8 hijackers and Turkish authorities. The first sign that negotiations were going well came with the release of 8 hostages, 5 Turks and 3 Russians, earlier in the afternoon. This was soon followed by the gunmen claiming they were ready to give themselves up because they had achieved their aims. Unlikely to help President Boris Yeltsin was his criticism of Turkey's handling of the siege, offering to send in Russian forces. On the shore, this kind of remark has only added to the anti-Russian sentiment that's been stirred up since the siege began, with thousands of Turks tracing their routes to Chechnya, sympathetic to the separatist cause. Rebel Chechens and civilians from the Dagestani village of Pervomorskaya lie in a Chechen hospital. These men, women and children managed to escape the 3-day-long bloody assault unleashed on the village by Russian forces. It now appears that almost half the 300 Chechen fighters who were holed up in the village during the siege managed to slip the Russian military net. Russian President Boris Yeltsin revealed the figures at a Commonwealth of Independent States summit in Moscow. Yeltsin said the full-scale assault was the only way out, but the Russian leader has faced a barrage of criticism in the Russian press at his handling of the crisis. At the summit, Yeltsin also called on the 12 member states to boost collective security against the West, but denied a return to the imperial ambitions of the past.
According to NATO's Secretary-General Javier Solana, Bosnia's warring factions appear to be on target for a midnight Friday deadline, requiring them to pull back from ceasefire positions.
That the Operation Joint Endeavour is firmly on track.
Supreme Allied Commander in Europe, General George Joulwan, said the trend was very positive. Earlier this week, it looked as though the former warring parties were not prepared to cooperate with an international Red Cross operation to release prisoners of war. But on Friday, Bosnian Serbs, Croats and the Bosnian government began to hand over some of their captives. Whether all POWs will be released before midnight on Friday remains to be seen. But for the moment, the NATO Peace Implementation Force seems content that each side has at least begun to honour the deadline. On the eve of the first ever Palestinian general election, Israeli soldiers shot dead 3 Palestinians in the West Bank. The men were from the militant Islamic movement Hamas, which is boycotting Saturday's vote. Israeli security is tight for the election. The West Bank and Gaza Strip have been sealed off until Sunday in an attempt to avoid any disruption by Islamic militants. For election monitors, Friday was a day of last-minute preparation as ballot boxes were distributed to polling stations throughout the Palestinian self-ruled territories. 1 million Palestinians are expected to vote for 88 representatives and a president of the Palestinian Ruling Council.
Das Allerwichtigste ist es, den Jungen den Blick dafür zu...
German President Roman Herzog marks the country's first Memorial Day for the victims of Nazism by urging Germans to learn a lesson from the mistakes of the past. But as Herzog addressed the Bundestag, firemen resumed their search for victims and clues amongst the smouldering debris of the foreigners' hostel in Lübeck. Throughout Thursday night, family and friends of the 10 known victims and injured held a vigil in front of the burned building. It's still unclear whether the fire was an accident or a racist attack. On Friday, police released without charge 3 men detained in connection with the blaze. Thousands of workers from the Dutch aircraft maker Fokker took to the streets of The Hague on Friday in a bid to save their jobs. Dutch Prime Minister Wim Kok has begun talks with Fokker's majority shareholder Daimler-Benz Aerospace in a last-ditch attempt to agree on a new finance deal for the firm. But he was far from optimistic about the outcome. Daimler-Benz wants the Dutch government to contribute over $1.5 billion over a period of 6 years to secure Fokker's future. But it seems unlikely that the government will bail the company out again.
Per dare al nostro paese un futuro diverso.
The leader of Italy's centre-right political bloc, Silvio Berlusconi, is hopeful that a deal may soon be struck on the formation of a new government for the country. Berlusconi, who's currently standing trial for corruption, was at first pushing for a snap general election. Now it seems he'll back a new government appointed by President Scalfaro if it carries out a programme of institutional reform. But left and right blocs are divided over the type of reform. The left wants to see a system similar to the German one with an appointed chancellor. However, the right wants a directly elected prime minister.
Competenti.
Greece's new Prime Minister, Kostas Simitis, is to form a new government, certain to overhaul Andreas Papandreou's former cabinet. The new cabinet is to be sworn in on Monday after Simitis received the mandate during a meeting with the Greek president. Simitis was one of 4 candidates who campaigned to take over from Papandreou, who resigned on Monday due to ill health after 2 months in hospital. But Simitis was the only one who didn't promise blind faith to Papandreou's policies. Key ministries such as Foreign Affairs, Labour and Social Security, Industry and Health look certain to change. Simitis' election is widely seen as a move to revamp Greece's political landscape and forge closer ties between Athens and the EU.
In Britain, the Maxwell brothers have been acquitted on fraud charges. The 2 sons of the late publishing tycoon Robert Maxwell have been in court for the last 8 months, accused of conspiring to defraud the Maxwell Group pension funds. After 12 days of deliberations, the jury finally declared on Friday that neither Kevin nor his brother Ian were guilty of the charges. Another company director, Larry Trachtenberg, also faced similar charges. He too was acquitted.
You know, the same thing, sleep, I go to school, I do everything, and child should do.
Maybe so, but 10-year-old Alexandra Nishita also happens to paint abstracts in her spare time. She's been hailed as a new Picasso, with collectors ready to pay up to $90,000 for one of her works. Alexandra, a Romanian immigrant in the US, paints around 4 hours a day, and critics have praised her extraordinary sense for shapes and colours.
mikä laulu